Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This topic is about defining what is artificial intelligence. But before I go into artificial intelligence, I'm going to talk about intelligence itself. What is intelligence? How we look at it? What people think about it? And then come to some understanding of what intelligence is all about. Having said that, we will then move on to defining what is artificial intelligence. But the very basic thing is that intelligence relates to human beings. Artificial intelligence doesn't relate to those physical items, but a copy of that, a replica of that, the way we think we do things. And of course, we will also look at some formal and some casual perspectives as well. Before moving further, also one important thing. Intelligence or artificial intelligence are basically unregulated terms. And what do we mean by unregulated? There are no centralized bodies, so to speak, or one central body that will let you define or say, this is what we mean by intelligence, or this is what we mean by intelligence. And typically what you say is, in the absence of some standardized definitions, people will say, all right, intelligence is not a specific thing, and you will come to know when you see it, this is what it is. So things being vague and unregulated, once again, something that has not been agreed upon by a centralized body of scientists or relevant people working on it. So this makes it all the more interesting and exciting that what we mean by intelligence. And then, of course, AI in general, of course, AI, by the way, is a scientific term, but some people view it differently. They think it is still an unregulated term. So keep that in mind. And this is why you will keep hearing people in general terms using various words, definitions, which we will discuss some of them, about the definition of how to go about doing it. By the way, intelligence or artificial intelligence, in fact, is a relatively new science. Although work in AI and intelligence has been going on for ages, particularly definition of intelligence itself, that has been going on for centuries. Philosophers, they used to think, how do we think, how do we react, how do we behave, and so forth. But in scientific terms, the scientific community or the computing community, that really started off much later than that. It's like something like mid-1950s or mid-20th centuries. So in fact, some people say that since this is a relatively new science, there is a lot of scope for new brains, new minds, new ideas, and perhaps scope for more Einsteins and more Newtons to be created within this science. So I like this concept very much. And in fact, this should give each one of us a lot of faith and give us something to look forward to. So there's a lot of space to be covered or work to be done. Why is it important? Very simple. We believe that intelligence is a mental quality. It's a mental quality. And based on, let's say, experience and the ability to solve problems, the ability to reason about things, and so forth. So 2 or 3 basic things that we know about intelligence. Experience. I mean, a very common example, look at a child. When he or she grows up, nobody tells them what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, but they learn out of experience from their environment. So if he or she touches a hot item, it moves back immediately. So it knows that this is hot. I don't have to touch it. His senses, his or her senses, they actually go back into the mind and train him. Don't touch it again. He's trying to communicate with somebody. And the person communicating with him is actually talks to him politely and lovingly. And the child will try and come close to you. So he's learning. He thinks that somebody who is polite to you, he is looking, through the eyes, and he's getting that message. So he's learning, building experience out of his interaction with the environment. So this is the concept of learning by experience. In general, then also, in everyday life, we come across a lot of choices, issues, and problem-solving situations, which we deal with every day. So for instance, you're going to office, you're getting late, the tire got punctured, and you don't know what to do. So this everyday issue, you say, ask your friend, your brother, somebody else to take you to the office, call Uber or whatever else you want to do. So these are those common chores that you have to do. And what does that mean? This means that you have the ability inside you to solve problems that you've learned over the years. Another aspect is knowledge. This knowledge is based on the experience as you go along in your building, and this then prepares you for newer situations for which you have not been trained, but based on that experience and the ability that you have and the mind that you apply, which is that reasoning knowledge, you adapt to new situations. So to cut short, problem solving, to think, plan, and execute, and then of course memorize also. Some of the very common items that we come across every day. You've been going to a university. There are timetables that to be created, and somebody has to think about them, how to satisfy each and everybody's constraints to define where a class is going to be held. That means the students, the teachers, and the classroom itself, availability and managing all of that. On the face of it, it looks very simple, but no, it requires a lot of thinking. Memorize. We all do it every day, particularly when you're taking up exams and people who are used to rote learning. So you depend on that. The ability to perceive things, how they're behaving, how the mind takes them on, and so forth. Now let's look at one typical example where we have, by the way, intelligence is not restricted to human beings only. It exists with all living beings, particularly animals as well. And we understand that the human mind is probably the strongest in terms of intelligence compared to all other animals and living beings. If you look at this example that we're talking about, we have a maze, and there's a mouse whose sense of smell is actually driving that mouse to get to something where it wants to be, which is to get to the cheese that is placed somewhere. So what's happening is the smell is actually getting to the mouse and it's trying to find a way, so it knows, it has its senses, it has intelligence enough. So you might want to go straight or turn left or right until it comes to a dead end or a stop, and then turns around, finds its way, move around, go to the next step, or backtrack, go back and then try some other options. We do these every day, does this animal, until it reaches where it wants to be. So the mouse was in fact intelligent enough to find a solution to the problem that it had, which was to get to the food. Let's take up another example. We have here a sequence of numbers like 1, 3, 7, 13, 21. Now, if you were asked to find the next number in the sequence, what would be your answer? And each one of us will actually attempt to do it maybe different ways. For instance, you might want to compare the numbers, see if there's something, a multiplication factor involved. So if you see 1 multiplied by some number gets you 3, which means 1 multiplied by 3 is 3, and then 3 multiplied by 7 gives you 21. So some of us may actually spend some time trying to think that there's some multiplication effect between these two. Others might use a different approach. You could say, all right, let's take these two numbers in sequence, the first two, and see if there is a subtraction or an addition between them going on. So maybe you want to say, all right, 1 plus some number equal to 3, which means add 2 to 1 to get to 3. And then the difference between 3 and 7, you take away 3 from 7, the result is 4. So the second difference, so the first difference between the two numbers is 2. The second difference between 7 and 4 is 3. Let's do it for the next one, 13 and 7. The difference is 6. So as you can see, the difference between two consecutive numbers is growing, and it's adding by a figure of 2. So first difference 2, then 4, and then 6, and then of course 13 and 21, 8. So here is an interesting idea. So your mind says, all right, looks like I found a solution. That if I keep adding, an even number and add 2 to it, so the next sequence could be that if I add 10 to the last number in the sequence, which is 21, I'm going to get to the last number, which is 31. So to conclude, what we learned are some of the characteristics of intelligence, like problem solving, like thinking, planning, execution, okay, and memorizing, for instance, okay, preparing for an exam. One item maybe we didn't extend so much time is dealing with ambiguity. We do it every day, temperature, hot, cold, food, delicious, not delicious. These are the vague terms that we use. And then to understand and perceive, meaning I'm looking at a number sitting here and looks like 6 to me, but if you look at it from the other side, it might appear 9 to you. Somehow we perceive things from our own perspective, from what we call as viewpoints, okay. So these are some of the characteristics of intelligence, and I hope you find it interesting. We'll see you next time. Thank you.